Hello, welcome to my channel, welcome to my garage. This is Rick's Garage, and today I'm going to start construction of a diorama for the tank that I just built, the 1/35th scale Panzer III. Now the video that I'm going to use as a guide is from Andy's Hobby Headquarters, and I'll put a link down in the descriptions. I'm not going to copy his video exactly, but I am going to use this video as a guideline on how to basically build and construct a diorama. So I went down to Home Depot and I bought this board. It's a pre-cut board. It's right now it's a 12 by 18, but I'm going to cut it down to a 12 by 12, 12 by 12 and a half. So it's going to more or less be, that size like that. And then I also went and I got pink styrofoam or pink installation foam. And this is about an inch thick. Now what I plan on doing, I've already got drawn out. Now see if I can't focus more in onto the board here. Now what I've already done is kind of sort of laid out a design of how I'm going to do this. This is going to be an area where it's going to be a mountain or a cliff that's coming down onto a roadside. So it's going to come around this way, get a bit larger, and then kind of taper off. And then over here will be a little bit of a grassy knoll, maybe some little mounds of grass, and then this area here I plan on doing a kind of a dirt road to match the weathering that I've got on the tank. So that's what my plan is right now. So let me get all this cut down and show you what that's going to look like, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, this is the basic design or the foundation of the mountain or the hillside that I'm going to construct. The foam is just going to be used as a foundation as I put the Mod Podge on top of it and kind of form and mold the Mod Podge into the basic design and configuration of the mountain or the hillside. I'm going to be gluing these foam pieces by using some Gorilla Glue, and I got this over at Home Depot as well. And as I understand it, this glue will kind of expand out as it's adhering to the foam and to the wood base. And that means I'm going to have some sort of a weight on top of the foam and to set the foam in firmly. And then I'm going to let that dry overnight. So let me go ahead and glue these in and get the weight on top of it. I'll come back and show you what that looks like. Now you'll also notice too that I have some numbers on the foam pieces. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit better for you. So the numbers on the side indicate the order in which that piece is going to be placed, working my way from the bottom up. And then I also have numbers on the top pieces as well. This is just so that I can get some sort of a remembrance of how these pieces went in, but I'm also going to be taking pictures of each piece coming off, and then as I put the pieces back on, I'm going to refer to those photos so I can get everything basically back in the same configuration. So let me go ahead and get these things glued in, come back, show you what that looks like, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, I've got everything glued down basically in the same configuration I had it before. It's not 100% the same, but it's relatively the same configuration. I did a little bit of modification as I was gluing the pieces in place. Now the glue is going to need weight in order to make these things sit down tight. So I got some jars of nuts and bolts to put down on here. And in this little tiny area, I do have some weight that I can put on here. It's a couple of rolls of pennies that should do the trick over here. I'll let that sit overnight, let it harden, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so the foam has dried overnight. The glue is all set, and now we're going to start to use Sculptamold to put all over the diorama. So this is going to go all over the entire area that you see here. I'm also going to put some on the back and on the sides, and I'm also going to be making some rocks. I've got some rock molds from Woodland Scenics. I'm going to make these, and the plan is to put them in certain areas all over this sculpture in order to make rock formations. So let me go ahead and get this all mixed up and put it on the diorama and come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, we got the Sculptamold onto the diorama, got it on all the sides, the front and the back. And this basically took what you see here, nearly 3/4 of that bag of Sculptamold. So if you're doing a diorama about this size, you may want to have maybe 2 bags of Sculptamold just in case. But 1 bag should do it, and when you're done, you should have at least 1/4 of that bag left over. Okay, so I sculpted around the pink installation foam, and that gave me more or less the configuration and how the hill or the mountainside is going to look. And then as the Sculptamold started to harden or to start to dry, I dipped my fingers into some water and started to smooth it out in areas, making these little ridges down and through here. And then those rock molds that I made, cluster of rocks in here, 1 rock over here and a rock there. And then just to kind of finish it off, I put a cluster of rocks on this side and 1 or 2 on this side as well. Okay, then the other thing that I did before I put the Sculptamold on, you'll see this little blue line right down here. That's painter's tape. Put that around the perimeter of the board that I was using because I want to make sure that this remains clean. And when I remove the tape, I'll just paint the edge there in black when I'm all done. The back of the diorama is more or less smooth because that's basically something you're not going to be seeing anyway. So I just kind of just smoothed it out, but I did put the Sculptamold on the back. I'll turn this around for you so you can see it. And this is heavy now. It's very heavy. So you can see how I more or less made that a smooth surface there. And I'll just paint it probably a brown color of some sort that kind of matches everything else. But this is not going to be seen. The way I envision this being displayed is going to be on a shelf, more or less looking just like that. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit and dry, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, I completed this yesterday. I've been keeping it in the backyard in the sun all day yesterday and also all throughout today as well, and it's still damp to touch. So it's not exactly dry and it's not exactly wet. It's just that it's cold to touch, and if I tried really hard, I could actually press into it. So I don't think that it's because I put too much of the Mod Podge on, because this is pretty much of a thin layer down here, and this is also still quite damp. I think this is going to take about another day or maybe 2 more days for it to completely dry. So if you're doing a diorama like this, you may want to prepare and time it. You can have 2 days or 3 days before you can start painting it. Okay, so I'm going to let this set out for another couple of days. According to the instructions on the bag, it says that when it's dry, you can sand it down. And obviously, in the current condition that it's in right now, I cannot sand it. So this is going to stay out for the next couple of days or so. And when it's completely dry, we'll go on to the next step. Okay, after about 4 days, this finally dried to a point where I think I can go on to the next step. It's still a little moist, I think, in a couple of areas, but overall I think it's pretty well dry. So we're going to go on to the next step, which is to apply Earth Undercoat from Woodland Scenics. Now this is a water-based paint, and it can go directly from the jar right onto the diorama, or you can dilute it with water. Now I'm going to put this all over, front, back, and sides, let that dry, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, now that this is dried, I'm going to start to airbrush some different shades of tans and browns to give it a dirt and muddy look in certain areas all over the diorama. The first color I'm going to apply is Natal Brown from Tamiya. Next, I'm going to apply some Desert Yellow from Tamiya. And Desert Yellow is more like a tan color or dry dirt kind of color to it, like a desert sand type color. So I'm going to put that all over the diorama here in certain areas, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, now you can see how it's starting to come together. Next, I'm going to apply Chocolate Brown from Vallejo with 50% Off-White from Vallejo. Mix those two together and apply it sporadically around the diorama. Okay, now the last color I'm going to apply is Buff from Tamiya, and this is going to be a light dusting. This is going to try to simulate dirt that has been blown around. So that's going to be the last one, and we'll wait for that to dry, and then we'll go on to the next step. So before I started painting the rocks on the diorama, I wanted to make sure that the technique I had in mind was going to work. So I made an extra rock from the molds that I was using, and I took this piece right here and started playing around. It took a few tries, took more than a few tries, but I finally got it nailed down to at least the color concept that I was looking for. So I took some Natal Brown, and then I took some Tamiya White, mixed the two together until I got to this color here, and I painted the entire rock. I waited for that to dry, and then I took some Desert Yellow and added it in through here, and I did it as a dry brush just to bring out these details. Then I took some black panel liner in through here and in here, waited for that to dry, and then I took a little bit of brown panel liner, put it in basically the same areas, and that's how I got the rock. Okay, so let's get these rocks painted and get on to the next step. Okay, I just completed applying the static grass to the diorama, and the grass that I used initially as the base was medium green, 4mm from Woodland Scenics. Once I got that down, I then added a little bit of dry grass or dead grass from Stoneheaven, and I just applied it in just certain areas around the diorama. And then to give it a little bit more of a dimension, I used static grass flock, medium green from Woodland Scenics. And I just added it in just certain areas to bring out some of the color of the grass. Because grass is not monotone, it's got all different types of shades to it. So I added those three shades to the diorama, and I'm going to let this dry overnight, and then tomorrow we'll go on to the next step. Okay, the next step is to apply some pigment powder to the face of the cliff. You'll notice that the facing here is a little bit too smooth. It's more kind of a man-made look. And what I want to try to achieve is a look of an actual cliff of or side of a cliff where the topsoil is loose and dusty and dirty. So I'm going to apply some pigment powders to try to achieve that look. The first is going to be European earth, and I'm going to apply it in just certain areas of the diorama where I want dry dirt to appear. I'm also going to apply a little bit down in this area too on the road here. It's going to match what's on the side of the cliff, and also down here in the foreground and around this rock area here. So the first thing I'm going to do, bring the camera up, I'm going to apply some odorless thinner right in this area here. And then I'm going to apply some European earth from Ammo by MIG. And I'll come back and show you what that's going to look like. Okay, now next I'm going to add a little bit of dark earth where the sun or constant erosion might occur. Again, I'm applying some odorless thinner to the area that I want to apply the dark earth to. And then I'm just going to stipple a little bit right here. Now this is going on kind of dark, but it's going to dry a little light once it's all done. So I'm going to get that all around the diorama in areas that I want it. I'm going to come back and show you what it looks like and go on to the next step. Okay, all the pigments are on the diorama. And again, what I used was European earth, which was just here on the roadside. And I also used it up here on the face of the cliff. And then after that, I took some turned earth, which is some mud, and I applied it down in here where water would accumulate into this whole area, and then down in this area here. And then I also applied it right in this area as well. You can see how water is constantly running down, or it's just not dry because of the constant moisture coming through and accumulates into that hole or that little tiny cave area. Now after that, I used some dark earth. Again, this is all from Ammo by MIG. And that gave the dark highlights that you can see in through here, right there, right in this area and through here. And then once all the pigments were on, I then applied some odorless thinner all over. I just painted the whole thing in odorless thinner, and that blended all those pigments together, giving you what you see right now. Okay, so that's all done, and now we're ready for the next step. Okay, the diorama is done. And the last thing that I did was I put these little weeds or mounds of grass weeds sporadically around the diorama, and then I also painted the base down here in black. But that's basically all I did on the last two parts of this building of this diorama. I put it in the backyard so you can see it in full sunlight. That actually gives you a different perspective of how this is going to look rather than being inside. Here's the diorama with the tank. I really enjoyed building this diorama. It was a lot of fun doing this. I learned a lot. This was my first project, and I look forward to doing another one, taking all the steps that I learned in this one and applying it to my next project. And I hope this video will do the same for you as well. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't already subscribed, please remember to subscribe. Other than that, always have fun in your garage or your workshop or wherever it is that you build your models. And until next time, take care.